At 7:17 in the morning on June 30th, 1908, the sky over Siberia detonated. It wasn't a slow burn, there was no missile trail, no strategic warning, and strangely no crater left behind. Just a flash so violent it turned the morning light of the Russian wilderness into a blinding spectral white. In an instant, the atmosphere itself seemed to ignite. A pressure wave born of pure energy began a journey that would circle the globe twice. It flattened 800 square miles of ancient taiga forest, snapping 80 million trees like toothpicks. It knocked people unconscious 40 miles away. It was felt in London. It was recorded in seismographs in Washington, D.C., and then almost as quickly as it arrived, the explanation disappeared. For most of human history, we have looked at the sky as a canvas of gods or a vacuum of physics. It represented safety. It was predictable. It was above us, a ceiling that would never come down. That illusion ended in 1908. We are taught that history is made by kings, wars, and revolutions. But sometimes history is made by a rock we never saw coming. To understand the scale of what happened, you have to understand the isolation. Siberia in 1908 was a place of myth and survival. The nearest witness were the Evenki people, indigenous reindeer herders who lived in a world where the spirits of the earth and sky were very real. To them, the event wasn't a meteor. It was the god Adga descending in a storm of fire. Semen Semenov, a local farmer sitting on his porch 60 miles from the blast, provided one of the most harrowing accounts. He described the sky splitting in two. He felt a heat so intense he thought his clothes were catching fire. Then, a massive thump, and he was thrown several feet off his porch, losing unconsciousness as the sound of stones falling from the sky filled the air. This wasn't just a noise. It was a physical force that shattered windows hundreds of miles away and knocked horses mid-stride. The energy released at Tunguska is estimated to have been between 10 and 15 megatons of TNT. To put that in perspective, that is nearly 100,000 times the power of the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima. If an explosion of that magnitude happened today over a major city, the casualty list would be in the millions. But in 1908, the world was strangely quiet. In London, people noticed what they called white nights. For 3 evenings, the sky over Europe was so bright you could read a newspaper at midnight. People played cricket matches in the glow of the sun that refused to stay down. The scientific community speculated, was it a volcano, an earthquake, a massive dust cloud? But no one went to look, not for a long time. Siberia was a fortress of ice and distance. And as the years passed, the Russian Empire began to crumble. Between the 1908 blast and the first real investigation, the world endured the First World War and the Russian Revolution. The sky exploded and a remote forest seemed like a ghost story compared to the millions dying in the trenches. Here is the detail that keeps planetary defense experts awake at night. The Tunguska object hit a patch of uninhabited forest. It was a near miss for humanity, but only because of the Earth's rotation. If that object had arrived just 4 hours and 47 minutes later, the rotation of the planet would have been placed in St. Petersburg, then the capital of the Russian Empire, directly under the blast. The Tsar, the government, and the culture are all gone in a flash of 15 megaton heat. The Russian Revolution wouldn't have happened because there would have been no city to revolt in. The entire trajectory of the 20th century would have been rewritten by a rock from space. We didn't survive Tunguska because we were prepared. We survived because of a 4-hour fluke of orbital mechanics. This raises a terrifying question. How many times has the clock favored us? And when does our luck run out? In 1927, Leonid Kulik, a Russian mineralogist, finally convinced the Soviet government to fund an expedition. He was certain he would find a massive iron meteorite. He expected a crater that would make the Beringer crater in Arizona look like a pothole. What he found instead was a nightmare of geometry. As Kulik and his team pushed toward the epicenter, they saw the trees, millions of them, all charred and striped of their needles, lying flat on the ground. They were all pointing in a butterfly pattern, radiating away from the center of the explosion. But when they reached the exact center of the blast, the physics stopped making sense. At the very center, the trees were standing upright. They were dead, stripped of their branches, looked like giant telephone poles driven into the earth. This is the signature of an airburst. When a fragile object like a stony asteroid or a comet hits our atmosphere at 30,000 miles per hour, the pressure becomes so immense that the object disintegrates before it touches the ground. It turns into a plasma cloud that carries the kinetic energy of a nuclear bomb. But even this official explanation has holes. If it was a stony asteroid, where were the fragments? Kulik searched for years. He drained swamps, he dug pits, he found nothing. No crater, no large pieces of space rock, just a silent, regenerating forest that held its secrets tight. If it was just a rock, why did the forest react so strangely? Scientists noticed that the trees in the Tunguska region weren't just growing back, they were growing at an accelerated rate. Genetic mutations were found in local insects. It looked like an aftermath of a radiation leak, but this was 1908. We hadn't split the atom yet. We didn't even have a word for fallout. Then, there was reports of an object's path. Eyewitnesses in different regions reported the fireball moving in different directions. Some saw it coming from the south, others saw it coming from the east. To account for all the sightings, the object would have to have maneuvered in midair. Natural rocks don't turn, comets don't change their minds. This led to the uncomfortable theories. Soviet science fiction writer Alexander Kazantsev proposed that Tunguska was the crash site of a nuclear-powered spacecraft. He argued that the telegraph pole trees were identical to the trees left standing in Hiroshima. While mainstream science dismissed this, they couldn't offer a better explanation for the missing pieces. Over the decades, every possible theory was thrown at the map. A mini black hole passing through the Earth, a chunk of antimatter, even a nuclear explosion triggered by concentrated uranium. Each theory was one problem, but created three more. The more we look at Tunguska, the less we know. There was one more name that haunts the Tunguska timeline. In 1908, Tesla was working on his Wardenclyffe Tower in Long Island. His goal was the wireless transmission of energy through the Earth's ionosphere. He famously claimed that he could build a peace ray that could project massive amounts of energy to any point of the globe. Conspiracy theorists and some historians point to a specific date. Tesla had requested maps of the most uninhabited parts of Siberia in the months leading up to the event. Some believe Tesla was testing his transmitter, aimed at the Arctic, but the energy overshot and was diverted by the Earth's magnetic field, detonating over Tunguska. Did Tesla cause the explosion? There was no concrete evidence to prove it. But shortly in 1908, Tesla's funding dried up and his tower was eventually demolished. Whether he caused it or was simply terrified by the coincidence, the timing remains one of history's greatest what-ifs. It adds a layer of human mystery to the celestial event. The idea that our own reach might have exceeded our grasp long before we were ready. For a century, Tunguska was treated as a once-in-a-thousand-years anomaly. We told ourselves that we lived in a quiet neighborhood of the solar system. Then came February 15th, 2013. Over the Russian city of Chelyabinsk, a meteor much smaller than Tunguska exploded in the atmosphere. It injured 1,500 people and damaged thousands of buildings. We didn't see it coming. It came from the direction of the sun, blinding our telescopes. Chelyabinsk was a wake-up call. It was a reminder that the teeth in the sky are still there. NASA now tracks near-Earth objects, but we are mostly looking for the planet killers, the ones miles wide, the 50-meter rocks like the one that hit Tunguska. We only track a small fraction of them. Tunguska wasn't an ending, it was a warning shot. History doesn't disappear because it's false. It disappears because it's inconvenient, because it challenges our sense of control. We want to believe that we understand the universe, that we have mapped the dangers, and that the catastrophe gives us a warning. The truth is that the sky can explode on a Tuesday morning while you're sitting on your porch, and the only reason you'll survive is because the Earth happened to be at the wrong angle at the right time. We're living on a spinning marble in a shooting gallery. The forest in Siberia grew back, the scars faded, but the event remains a footnote labeled unsolved. If this story made you question what you thought you knew, then you're already looking in the right direction. Because the most important lessons aren't found on the map. They exist beyond the map.